I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Chuck Alvey, and Chuck is actually, I think you're the only person that I know from Reno now. The biggest, it's the biggest small city in the world. Am I getting that right?
Biggest little city. That's
Biggest
what it
little
is.
city in the
And I
world.
can introduce you to more people. I know a few.
Awesome. What's and I just have to ask because it seems like such a unique place. What's it like living in Reno?
It's like the porridge is just right. From Michigan is the first 30 years of my life, then 10 years in Arizona. So I've been to the hot, muggy, mosquito-y world, and I've been to
Yes.
the other. It's wonderful because it's small, like its biggest little city kind of lives up to it. You can get to big cities, but you're out in nature. You get all four seasons, nothing extreme. So I just love it. Been here 34 years.
Versus living in Phoenix, which is basically like living inside of an air fryer.
In the summer. The winters are very nice, but the
I've
summers,
been to, I've been told that 9 months out of the year it's terrific, but those three
yep.
months will kill you.
Yeah, you just stay out of it. You just stay in the air conditioning or the pool. That's it. But yeah, it was nice, but I'm glad I'm here.
Awesome. So you've been a Vista chair for I believe 13 years, right?
Correct.
And you've got four different groups. What led you to Vistage?
Actually, I was a friend of mine when I was in Rotary, started the very first Vistage group back when it was called Tech here in the mid 90s, and I really wanted to join it. And my parent company didn't have the foresight, wisdom, or wouldn't let me join for the sake of the money. So when I became the CEO of Edon and I was in kind of control of my own destiny, another Vistage chair, Grant Anderson, came to me and he got me into my TA group, I think around 2000. So I've been 24 years a member, I guess. And
Wow,
it's just, I love learning. So I was intrigued and had a great time with it.
that's amazing. What was your and you mentioned that you were the CEO of a company. T Tell me about your career prior to being a Vistage chair.
Well, it's careers because I can't
Career.
decide what I want to be if I ever grow up, and I don't want to grow up. I was in broadcasting primarily, 31 years. I started as a producer director. In fact, I was a disc jockey for a couple of years in Top 40 Radio, and then I was a producer director in television, production manager, program manager, station manager, and eventually general manager. Did that for 31 years in Michigan, Arizona, and here in Nevada. I spent about 4 years as an EMT part-time during my early days in broadcasting, which gave me great perspective on life when you do that in a trauma center and work on an ambulance. And then I spent 13 years as the CEO of the Economic Development Corporation here. It's a private, not-for-profit corporation, works to build industry, and then a Vistage chair.
That's quite a journey. And by the way, you have a fantastic radio voice. I
Well,
can I
thank you.
can I can see how that worked out for you.
But it's funny when I was a DJ in South Bend, Indiana, in the summer of 1968. My girlfriend's father said, "I don't know how you did that because you always mumble when you're around me." I said, "Well, you got a microphone."
You just start carrying it around with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Just walk around with the headphones and the microphone. You're always on. I love that. Um, so what as a Vistage chair and making that transition from being a Vistage member to being a Vistage chair, and I've met a variety of folks, and there are, and I meet folks who were longtime members like you, and I meet folks who had legitimately never heard of Vistage until they found out about the chair opportunity. For you making that transition from being a member to being a chair, what did that feel like for you?
It felt like being rescued in a large way. When I left the Economic Development Authority, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I actually went for a couple of other positions in economic development, top level positions, came in second in San Diego and in Tampa. But in the middle of it all, I was realizing I really didn't want to move again. I didn't want a big city. And a friend of mine got a call from Vistage and said, they're looking for Vistage chairs. You ought to talk to them. So I did. What it was, the call to me was the opportunity to help, to give back. I have a member in my group right now who talks about having coming, she's a wealth advisor, and it's getting to your work optional stage of life. And that's kind of where I was. And so it was an opportunity to be a part of, I've always been a part of creative teams in the broadcast business and economic development. And I liked challenges and challenging people. And I thought, well, the best thing that was said to me, quite frankly, Eric, was my best practice chair, Bill Euler, said when he was talking to me after about 3 hours, he said, I get the impression you like being a part of and creating teams that have a certain creative friction. And I responded that I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, more I thought about it, it made sense. And he said, that's what you're doing as a Vistage chair. You're building your own teams. You're recruiting them. The difference is they're paying you, but you're still building a team of people. And that just resonated with me that I love doing that. And so that was my transition.
It's a really fascinating way to look at it. And I haven't heard a chair describe it in that way, but you're right, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's interesting to me that you if you think about most of your careers and you have a marketing firm, as if I understand Eric, and if you think about it, you've got clients, vendors, all kinds of people. 80% of those people are just fine to work with. 10% you look forward to working with,
Yep.
but there's usually about 10% that you just kind of have to to
Yeah.
deal with.
You
When I was
gotta
in economic
power through.
development, could have been a developer, could have been a city councilman, somebody that just was kind of frustrating. But as a Vistage chair, you don't have to work with anybody you don't really like. And so I don't have that stress in my life anymore.
So tell me about your first group and what it was like building that.
Well, I went to my chair academy in March of 2012, and I launched the group with 8 members in July of 2012. And I remember it was surprising. I'm fairly connected in town because of my time in the television as the general manager of the television station here in the Acme Development. But the people that joined were not mostly people I knew. It was a prospecting, connecting process that I went through.
Right.
And I was a good group. We got started. It's not the same people. None of the same people are still in it now, 12 years later. And I remember at the end of the first meeting, the 8 of us sitting there, and someone said, "Wait a minute! I just sat here with a bunch of people I don't know and talked about things I don't talk about. How
Right.
did that happen?"
For a whole day.
For a whole day. And that was the moment that it hit me that this has power beyond just having a meeting, just getting together. That there was really strength in it. And so that was my first experience with the 8. And I also kind of made some mistakes in recruiting. Not there were any bad people in there, but people that weren't as committed as they are now. So I learned a lot from that recruiting process.
Sure. What's it? Do you think of it as all the same group? Even though I guess it's kind of like the ship of Theseus. You know, you replace all the parts, and is it still the same thing, or is it something new? Do you look at it as still the same group, or is it a different thing now?
Much different. It's an evolution, and a lot of people who don't like change shouldn't do this because it needs to be constant change. I know there's people who will, when I'll add somebody to the group or I'm trying to add somebody, I'll hear my members say occasionally, the group is just right. Why do you want to mess it up? It's like, well, before you got in, it was a different group and it was just right. And then you came in and somehow it's worked. And
Right.
so it's they most of them realize now because I'm very selective in who I invite, I meet a lot of people, but I don't invite many. And so they've come to know that, and some chairs actually, that their members choose who's going to be in the group. I don't. I work really hard at understanding people. I use the take flight with disc. I interview carefully. I use referrals, and so it's constantly changing. And every time I get somebody new, I will find out later. People say, you know what? I'm glad you had that Eric guy come join our group because he brings something I never thought of before. So it's not the same group at all.
When as you've been doing this, I imagine that your not only have your groups evolved, but I'm sure that your style and the way that you approach being a chair has probably evolved quite a bit as well. How have you changed in that time as a leader, as a coach, as a facilitator to these folks?
Listening more than anything else, learning to be a much better listener, um, and leading, but not leading by being the one who's doing the talking. People often say, "Wow, you've had so much experience. You must give a lot of advice." And I really try not to. I fall into it, but I've learned and changed the most is that I've learned to let the group do the work. And my job is to be kind of like an orchestra conductor and keeping the instruments playing, getting them tuned, playing together, and working together. So in the beginning, I tried to control more of it. I'm an old TV director, Eric. So, I'm used to kind of having a rundown and calling the shots. And during the COVID days, the Zoom meetings were easy for me. And I realized that sometimes you have to really stop and step back and not have, I have an agenda, but it's very fluid. And I'll flex with that agenda a lot. And that's what changed. In the beginning, I wanted to stay on time. I got
Yeah.
boom, 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 go down the list, get it all done. And sometimes you can't do that. And I've learned that a lot. And I've also learned to listen carefully and ask my members to jump in. Somebody last week, we had a meeting, and partway through, one of my members jumped in and said, wait a minute," to another member who just worked an issue. "You just did something, that issue we worked, it's totally different than what you said you wanted to do when you joined the group a year ago. What are you doing?" And at that point, we'd already worked the issue for an hour. And he turned to me and says, "Look, I don't mean to be your co-chair." And I said, "Well, time out. You made a great point. We need to bring this back up next month, but we don't have time right now. But let's
Right.
do it again. And you're all my co-chairs." And it was a moment, gave me a chance to say, we're doing this together. Just because I'm the guy, sitting at the head of the table or whatever, doesn't mean it's all me.
Yeah, I imagine actually that because you brought it up now that you said it that way, that COVID must have been like a little bit more natural for you than than other folks. You're like, hey, cut the camera too, and she's like, no, my name is Susan. Like that's not, but but legitimately that must have actually been a great comfort for the folks that you were in groups with because for a lot of people being virtual for that type of meeting was a very new experience.
Well, you're right. I don't like Zoom as a practice. I like it as a convenience more than anything else. But I like being in person much, much, much better. And you're right, Eric, in that fact, a couple people said partway through, these seem to be somewhat smoother than the other meetings usually. Why are you doing this? And I
Right.
thought, I don't know. And then about the third person that said it in different groups, and I looked up and I realized, looked at the screen and saw all the different pictures on the screen. I thought, well, that's what I used to do when I was a director. I'm looking at cameras 1 through 4, and I'm looking at the film island and the other stuff, and I'm just directing the show. And so it was more comfortable for me. So I find it easy. I just don't, I don't, I'd rather dance in person, but yeah.
What's So you've got four groups. You've got a chief executive group, you've got a key exec group, you've got trusted advisor group, and you've got an advancing leader group. Um, as you're pivoting between those audiences throughout the month, I imagine the one that's the most different is the advancing leaders. What what's the difference between for you working with that group versus working with, say, your chief execs?
Interestingly enough, a variety of things are different and are not different, Eric. People
Right.
often talk about that, and I try to treat them all like they're CEOs. So I figure they're in charge of their kingdom where they are. So they're still CEOs. So I don't see it as levels. Um, and I'm also about to start working on starting a new HR only group, which is kind of an experiment we're working
Oh
on right now.
wow. That's different. I haven't even heard of anything like
No,
that
they
before.
haven't done it before. I've been checking with my regional vice president about it, and it'd be like a key group as HR, but there's we're going to try it. It may or may not work, but it's something we're going to try. But to your question about the differences, is some people talk about how the key or the advancing leaders are more eager and fresh than the CEOs. They're more pliable. I don't find that at all. I find they're all very, very pliable, probably because of the kind of people I try to recruit into the
Sure.
meeting. But there is a difference. It's funny, we were talking just recently in the meetings about somebody who has a board, works for a board, a quasi-government agency, how we have to learn to manage up. You have to lead up besides leading down. And so that's really, when you think about it, I'm learning that from the advancing leaders is they have to not only do what they do in their jobs, but they have to manage their bosses. And we all do to some degree.
Sure.
So I find the advancing leaders, they're a little more eager at times to learn, but there's still not a lot of difference. I find they're all quality people.
And the advancing leader pro, I mean, it's more of a, as I've come to understand it, and please correct me if my understanding is wrong, but I've understood it that it's more of a, it's a blend between a peer group and a curriculum, as I've kind of come to understand it. Like there's more of a program to it, versus the CE groups and the TA groups, which are, you know, basically straight peer advisory groups and with like a side of learning. Do I have that right, or am I misunderstanding?
I love when people say, correct me if I'm wrong, because I never usually get to, but I'm going to correct you.
Please, thank
So
you.
opportunity. As I understand it, and there's an old saying that if you've been to one Vistage group, you've been to one Vistage group. They're not all the same. So
Sure.
there may be people doing it. I think that what you're talking about in terms of the curriculum is the emerging leaders group.
I
Um,
may very well be.
and the Emerging Leaders is a 2-year program with a finite end. It is curriculum with a specific set of classes you're supposed to do. I had that group. In fact, that group has emerged into my Advancing Leaders. And
Gotcha.
yes, the idea is they have a topic if it's on executive presence or team building or finance. They'll have a speaker on that topic. And then in the afternoon, they give you a syllabus. And you're supposed to follow the syllabus and actually teach, kind of embed what they learned in the morning in the afternoon. For me,
Gotcha.
me and my group, when it was an EL group, that did not work because I don't like that kind of teaching. They didn't like it. It was boring. So we found other things to do. We do a little bit of that in embedding, but then we started doing issue processing like the others. In the advancing leaders group, it's open-ended. So if there's no
Gotcha.
two-year circle, there's no curriculum. So I pick the speakers based on what their needs are, and it's a regular group. The one subtle difference is I have sometimes sets of 2 people in the group, so we can't work an issue if they're going to complain. If Chuck and Eric are going to complain about each other, you can't be at the same meeting. So we
Chuck
we
and
have
Eric
that.
have been known to do that, so
Yes, yes, it's happened. Yeah, because I don't wear headphones, as you can see, so we have issues.
it's it's true. Um, and you have corrected me. I was wrong. Uh, Speaking of speakers, how do you go about choosing speakers, and what would you who's your favorite that you've had in the last 13 years? Who's that speaker that just came in and blew everybody's mind?
Well, let me tell you how, and then I'll tell you who. The how is I've just changed it. For a long time, what I did was I used the Vistage decision model, which I will still continue to use, to
Sure.
find out what topics are important. Then I would give my executive assistant, Sinead Odu, who used to be with Vistage and does a phenomenal job for me. I'd say, here's my topics for the year. Now find me the best speakers in that. Let's rank order them, and then I'll come back and tell you who I like and don't like, and then you go book them. Having said that, I'm letting the business decision model is a little narrow in terms of how wide you can go in topics. And so I've kind of decided to go the other way and just look for the very best speaker I can get. And then make sure, and I just still want to keep the topic in mind. I can't have a great speaker if I can't have
Right.
5 AI speakers in a year. But then I will go that way. So I just did that. I just started for the first time this month. I've got 5 of the 7 I wanted have been booked. One of them turned me down and told me why, because they don't want to travel anymore. I get that. So the way I do is I want the very best speaker I can get because my groups have matured, they're getting really, really very picky. And what I look for in speakers is I want people who are going to be extremely interactive, who are not going to have a big slide deck, who are going to engage my members. My key executive group, for example, we talked, I think, before we started recording about the disc profile, and I
Mm-hmm.
have 5 high Ds or high Eagles in that group, and they have very low tolerance. If you don't engage them right from the beginning, you lose them. So that's how I pick them. Favorite speakers, that's a little bit like asking who's your favorite child or what's your favorite movie. It depends. I would say my favorite speaker is my last one, whoever that is.
Whoever
But
that is.
I've got a few that I've really liked over the years. Christine Courtney, I just had, and she's a former theater person who does leadership, been at it for a long time now, a member of the New York group. And quite frankly, she just was very engaging. We did more interactive. I've got aerial shots with my drone of them doing exercises out in the parking lot. Severin Sorensen on AI, he lit people up on that. He still got me buzzing, and I'm still going through his books. Bill Crawford is just an always perennial. He has so many different topics on emotional intelligence, and I still quote him a lot. Um, I have to say the fact that I become certified in the Take Flight with DISC because my members liked it so much was Merrick Rosenberg probably had the biggest impact when he came and spoke a few years ago because they liked it, they use it. We now have the birds on all the name tents. I train, I'm certified in like 6 different versions of it. So he's probably the most impactful.
That's terrific. To change gears as
Yeah,
as I look towards getting us wrapped up on time.
yep,
Um, if you were sitting across the table right now, if you were sitting with somebody who had never done a peer group of any kind before, not Vistage or any of the other common brand names, and they're running a business and they've got that isolated feeling and they've got um, what would you say to that person about the power of a peer group? What's the advice that you would give them?
well, first, I dig really deep. I actually had a selection or a meeting with somebody about Vistage and spent 90 minutes and never talked about Vistage. Most importantly, my job is to find out what they need and want. And then when they need and want that, then the thing I tell them is I ask them is, how much help could you get if you could have 300 years of experience in a room of qualified people who care about you, operate confidentiality, and are deep thinkers? What do you think the value of that is? Because it really is about value. Sometimes they'll say time or price, but it's really about value, and that's the only time that those things come into issue. So I have actually said to a couple members when they say, "Yeah, I think I might do this in a couple months," I say, "Well, what could you?" And you can fill in the dirty word. What do you think you could screw up between now and then if you don't join my group?
There you go.
And that's generally gotten their attention. So yeah.
What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they have questions about you, about your groups, about the four distinct seasons in Reno? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure, whether or not the Wolfpack basketball team at UNR is going to do any good this year. I just at the dinner last night. Probably the best way would be I love texting, and texting is 775-232-4825. And then I have the standard Vistage Chair email, which is chuck.alvey@vistagechair.com, and either one of them I will respond to.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Chuck. I really enjoyed it.
Eric, I enjoyed you as well. Thank you very much. And I'm giving you the Best Beard of the Day award.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I This is if only it grew so well on top of my head, but I'll
Hey,
I'll
hey,
I'll take this. Yeah, I
I
see.
get that. I get that. Yeah, I only grow it in my ears and my nose now. So good job.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.